we are, Dr. Darshan Shah. What's happening, dude?
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for doing this. It was great when you came to our podcast and did that with us. And I'm hoping to give you the same amount of amazing information that you gave me, hopefully.
Awesome, man.
Especially happy to meet this amazing person over here.
Yeah, you guys.
This amazing doggy, Cookie.
My co-host,
Yeah.
Cookie. We're sort of like Penn and Teller, and whichever, I forget which one of Penn and Teller doesn't talk, but Cookie's my co-host. That's the Penn, or I think it's Teller, perhaps, that doesn't talk. So yeah, Cookie's a silent co-host, but she adds a lot of ambiance to the recordings.
She's pretty amazing. She's like right on my lap for this entire thing, and I love it.
She's so cuddly, dude.
She's
And I have to
amazing.
remember sometimes that not all people appreciate a cuddly, sometimes smelly dog on them. I used to not like dogs because I
Yeah.
got attacked a lot just in my childhood and even in adult life pretty viciously on a couple occasions. So if dog came near me, I was like, oh, gross, get off me. I was like, now when somebody doesn't like dogs, I'm like, are they satanic? Like, how do you not like a dog?
How do
They're
you
so
not like
awesome.
dogs, right?
So I get it when people don't, but now I'm completely sprung. It's ridiculous.
Oh, me
I'm
too.
like
Yeah.
I post pictures of her constantly. I'm obsessed. All right, so let's jump right into it.
Sure.
I know you've got patients and things going on later today, and I have an important meeting too. And so we've got at least an hour, if not an hour and a half, if it goes like that. And I have a lot to talk about with you because I've been watching you and your business grow, and you guys keep integrating more modalities and services and things like that. And I'm always thinking, what the hell does that do? And so I'm selfishly going to just be learning a lot, and the audience gets to listen in and hopefully benefit too.
For sure.
So you're a real live doctor. You're an MD.
Yes.
And, as opposed to people like me that are armchair doctors, that are learning as I go. Of course, you can learn a lot from reading books and audiobooks and podcasts and stuff. I probably know more about healing than some doctors that get stuck in a paradigm.
I would absolutely agree with you.
But what did you study in school, and what's your area of medicine?
Sure.
And then what led you to get into the anti-aging and biohacking stuff that you've now kind of merged in your practice?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my history in healthcare and medicine goes back to basically my childhood. I've always wanted to be a doctor since I was a kid.
Did you have family doctors?
Yeah, well, yes, my dad is an Ayurvedic doctor from India.
Oh,
Actually.
rad.
Yes, and he practiced Ayurvedic medicine. Many people in the family are doctors, so it was kind of like part of our lineage growing up. We have lots of ancestry in the medical field, and I just wanted to do it. I loved it. I had a very great interest in it from a very young age. So I was lucky enough to kind of rush my way through school. I became a doctor when I was 21 years old.
What?
Yes. I did my first appendectomy when I was 21.
What?
Can you believe that?
What is that taking out?
An appendix.
Oh, okay. I was like, what organ is an app? Oh, okay, appendix, yeah.
A lot of us do need appectomies, right? But
Yeah,
no, this
right.
is
I need that.
appendectomy, which is...
I need an Instagram-ectomy.
Yeah.
So that's a crazy fast track. So you're kind of a child prodigy of sorts.
Well, I don't know. I just worked really hard,
Okay.
mainly because I love what I was doing and I found it fascinating. So I just kind of really dove into it, like I said, from a young age.
Yeah.
And part of my fascination was just looking at organs in the human body and how organs and what we're made up of is just so fascinating that it all works together so well. So I decided to go into surgery just so I could have some direct hands-on experience with the human body and making a change immediately. So I went into surgery. I did trauma surgery and general surgery for a long time. During that time, I was also a Navy physician, so I had a lot of that kind of primary care in the Navy Reserves as well. Did that for many years. Decided that even though I loved trauma surgery, there wasn't a lot of sleep involved because most of it happens in the middle of the night. So
Right.
yeah,
I just spent an evening at the Cedars-Sinai emergency room. My brother had some sort of meltdown. He's okay. But yeah, I was in there all night, and I thought, and the people that worked there, not to interrupt, I'm sorry,
no,
but it's related in an anecdotal way. But I'm sitting in there going, I walk in the emergency room and I'm starving. My brother called me at 12:30 a.m. He was like, "Are you up?" I'm like, "Duh, you know I'm up." I couldn't pretend. I could like, turn my phone off. You know, oh no, I'm not here. I was like, yeah, I'm up. Our other brother's definitely not up, so I was the one. But anyway, I take him in there and I'm starving, and so I go to the vending machine, and like the healthiest thing I could find were some Rice Krispie treats, and then the lighting in there is all fluorescent lighting, all blue light, and I'm looking at the people working there, going, oh man, you guys are in here treating sick people, but you're getting sick. It's like. Yes. It's like the reason everyone's in that well, not the emergency room per se, because you could have acute trauma or an accident or something, but just general pathology-wise and disease model-wise, the reason everyone's in the hospital is because of the food they're serving in the hospital, the EMFs in the hospital, and the blue light in the hospital. And I'm just like, oh, God, these doctors are in here killing themselves to help other people that are killing themselves because of this exact environment. It's crazy.
Yeah, don't even get me started on it, because that's a whole reason why Next Health came to be as well, because, you know, the entire healthcare system is not healthcare, it's disease care, right? It's really, once you get into a disease state is when they start really having options for you with pills and with, you know, with surgery, those kind of things. There's not a lot of health prevention maintenance going on or optimization going on. I remember where I trained in Kansas City for medical school. I went to medical school in Kansas City. There was one restaurant in the entire hospital, and this was like a huge hospital. It was a McDonald's, you know. And that was pretty much all we had. It was either that or the hospital cafeteria, which was even worse.
That's so messed up.
Yeah, and then there's like a Coca-Cola machine like at every floor. You know, it's the same kind of thing you're talking about.
That's like nuts. Having some like tire piercing road spikes on your way into the mechanic's garage.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. Right.
Oh
right.
God, that's so. It's you know, the state we live in. It's funny, man. I look at us as a society. You know, something I've been very concerned with. You know, I try not to be paranoid, but it's like, God, some of the stuff that's going on in our environment is so gnarly. You know, so we have 5G rolling out in LA. It's one of the cities they're testing it on, I guess you could say. And I mean, I'm literally like, the more I research this millimeter wave stuff, I mean, it is not good. They're going to turn the city into a literal microwave, as if it's already not. Then yesterday, you know, I can't help myself. I'm researching 5G a little bit. I think I started Googling around like cities that I might want to live in that don't have it, or towns or whatever. And then, so one of the articles I come across is how in the UK, they're rolling out 5G and they're putting it under the streets. So they'll open a manhole and put one of the antenna in there, so it's like radiating from the ground, so you can't even see it. Yeah. So you might, you know, buy a home or live in an apartment building or a hospital. Hospitals often have cell towers on them, which is insane. Yeah. And I'm like, oh God, now you don't even know. At least on my street, I can look and see, oh, there's a 5G tower on the lamppost in front of my house. I'm moving, or I'm not going to move in there. Sure. I'm just like, oh Jesus, we live in such a crazy time because there's a huge population of people like you and I and most people listening to this that are aware of some of these things. But then there's an entire world of people that are, you know, ignorant and or they're motivated by profit. Absolutely. Hence, you know, a lot of the medical industry, so they just choose to kind of ignore some of the apparent.
You see it over and over and over again. Risks. Right. You see it over and over again. Like our food industry is a perfect example of how, you know, the sugar industry and and like the different industries contributed a lot of money, and they got themselves put high up on the scale of things that you don't mess with. Right. And for years we've been killing ourselves eating sugar, dairy products, these kind of things. And we just didn't know. And it was on the food pyramid. It must be healthy for us. Right.
Isn't like the main thing on the food pyramid grains?
Yeah. It's the number one thing.
The worst food a human being could ever eat. We literally don't have a digestive system meant to consume seeds of grasses, which is what grains are. And
exactly.
Yeah. But see, I was like punk rock in high school, right? I mean, I hated the man. I was like against fascism and all that. I was like a anti-fascist. And so I don't like when authoritative entities deceive and trick people and harm people. It just pisses me off because it's not fair, you know? And so, when you start looking back, well, how did if fat's good for us, I mean, healthy fats, obviously not omega-6 seed oils and canola and all that. But if healthy fats are good for us, where did the low fat thing come from? And then you research that, and it was propagated by the sugar industry.
Absolutely.
Because sugar makes you fat. Yeah. And so they tried to like push the blame onto fats and get people to stop eating lard, which is, you know, depending on what animal it comes from, it's really good for you, and butter and all this kind of stuff. And hence you have margarine made from these rancid seed oils. And that kind of stuff just pisses me off because I don't like deception. You know? I have my faults as a human, but one of the things I really strive to be is just authentic, real, and honest, and to have integrity. And
Right.
when people don't, I want to punch them in the face and be
Yeah.
not spiritual.
Yeah, and, you know, there's a lot of books written about that entire fat shaming that happened in our government, and why it happened. The politics behind it are just incredible, and it makes me not drink. You know, I don't support Coca-Cola because they're one of the peoples that contributed a lot of money because they use sugar, right? And if sugar was, all the blame was on sugar, their product would basically be defunct, right? And so they paid a lot of money to push the blame on fat, and it basically started, you know, that and cigarettes started the chronic disease epidemic that we have today in the United States and all over the world, actually, because, you know, unfortunately, every country looked to our government to create dietary guidelines. They said, well, if the U.S. is doing it and they spent the money making these dietary guidelines, we should be following the same. And so that's how chronic disease started and kind of started spreading throughout the world, is those government guidelines that were given, I think, back in the 60s or 70s.
Yeah,
It's
the
crazy
USDA.
history.
And then what's funny about it, like now I'm looking at the 5G thing with the telecommunications, and if you look at the heads of the FCC, there's this revolving door with corporate executives and shareholders within telecommunications companies.
yeah.
And you had the same thing with the USDA and Monsanto and the FDA and Big Pharma. You know, if you start putting together these family trees, which, you know, some people do, thankfully for us, and you go, oh, that's interesting. Well, why is the head of the CDC also one of the biggest shareholders in the biggest vaccine company?
Yeah.
That's interesting. You know, you start looking at that.
Why is American Heart Association getting funding from the sugar industry? Like, why is that happening, right?
These sons of bitches.
It's really, and that's why it's really, one of the things we talk about at Next Health all this time, it's so important for every single person to educate themselves individually. And, you know, you're doing a great job with your podcast. I mean, people need to listen to podcasts. They need to read books. They need to educate themselves and not just go off of what, you know, the government guidelines are. People have to take their health into their own hands.
Dude, I mean, that's the great thing about long form media, like we have the opportunity to share in right now, is I'm not beholden to anyone. I can say whatever I want. I mean, I'm not going to say like powdered green juice is bad for you because Organifi would get pissed. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just playing. But you know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, it's like I could basically say whatever I want if I'm willing to accept the consequences of a rebuttal, you know?
Right.
But these conversations, I think, give us a lot of autonomy as people, where I can go, wait, I don't have to listen to the CDC or the FDA or the FCC or any of these regulatory agencies that are supposed to be there to protect me as a member of the populace. When they're compromised and corrupt, it really is your own responsibility. I don't go to anyone to fix me unless I've tried everything to fix myself. And that's why I love places like Next Health, and I'm always like supporting businesses that have that model, because I can go in there and actually take responsibility for my own biology. But anyway, this is a tangent that I will go on forever. I want to get back to your origin story. And so you start practicing medicine at the ripe old age of 21, which makes me a little nervous. I don't know if I want my surgeon to be 21, but okay.
Yeah, I was
so
like,
then what happened next in the story?
So I did surgery.
Yeah,
I did surgery for a while. Wasn't sleeping much. Decided to focus in on doing reconstructive and plastic surgery. So I went to the Mayo Clinic, got trained in some really intense reconstructive surgery. Did that for many years, and, you know, typical doctor story. Okay, you know, doctors are taught maybe one full day of nutrition in
Is
medical
that really
school.
True?
It's like
that's terrifying.
I think it's changing now, but I mean, I remember we spent 99% of our time learning how to diagnose disease and what to prescribe for disease, and I will say it myself that my nutrition education was very minimal, and I didn't know what to eat. I didn't know what I was putting in my body toxin wise. I had none of that education. So I found myself a few years ago fat and hypertensive and, you know, pre-diabetic, and
wow.
And I had my son, and I just looked in the mirror and I said, this has to change. Like, I got to figure this out. And obviously what I was taught in medical school is not helping, because I don't know what I'm doing. And I went through this journey of just learning and, you know, having having a really strong interest in biochemistry and pathology, I kind of took a lens of my medical training to it, and kind of saw what people in nutrition were talking about, where people in toxicology were talking about, how it really does apply. And I discovered this incredible field called functional medicine. And you've met many functional medicine doctors yourself. And I got really interested in functional medicine because it's a field of medicine that's about getting to the origins of disease versus diagnosing disease and prescribing a symptomatic treatment for it. And I looked at obesity, hypertension, diabetes totally differently after I got to learn a little bit about functional medicine. And I changed my entire life. I lost the weight. I eliminated half the pills in my, most of the pills in my medicine drawer. And I started coaching my patients. I said, you should be doing X, Y, Z, and rather than taking pills, and rather than, looking at gastric bypass surgery as a way to lose weight and those extreme type of measures. And through all of that, I said, we need to take this message and make it more accessible to people and give people a place to go where they can participate in their own health care, their own health optimization, participate in turning back disease processes. And so that's where Next Health came about. It was basically an experiment that myself and my partner launched 2.5 years ago, and we had no idea if it would work or people would even care. We had a hard time even telling the story about what we do at that time, and people loved it, and they started coming in for IV therapy, cryotherapy, hormone optimization, all the things, diet modification, sleep. We talk a lot about sleep and how important that is, about your toxins, and people started talking this language with us, and we started educating them. And you were gracious enough to come to our Forefront series, where we have people come and speak to people about different aspects of their health that they should be aware of. And it's been great so far. And we're only 2 years into it. We still have a lot to do, but I think people are getting the message, and we're really developing this community around Next Health of people that are actively trying to take control of their health, learn about their health, and really turn back the clock on disease, get to a point where they feel super healthy and they're in charge of their own bodies again. So
that's incredible. You guys have only been around for a couple of years. Like, the growth has been insane. For those of you listening, by the way, when I started going to Next Health, it was the one on Crescent Heights and Sunset, because it's right across the street from my Kundalini yoga studio, Nine Treasures. And I went over to Trader Joe's one day or something. And I said, cryotherapy, vitamin IVs, what the hell? I was so excited because I'm into this stuff for a long time. But for those of you listening, man, if you come in LA, you can go to that one. But the Century City one, like the new location, is it's insanely beautiful. And back in the day, if you went to some sort of alternative clinic like that, there would be like plastic ferns and old like Afghan, it would be like very dirty feeling and antiquated and not well designed. It definitely was not like a curated experience. It's like you'd go to someone's house. I mean, I remember when I used to first started doing colonics. It was like in someone's freaking bathroom. They outfitted. Oh yeah, they outfitted it with like a colonic machine and stuff. So it's cool to see things like Next Health pop up where it's a super high-end experience, and it feels sterile and comfortable. And so it's been really cool just as a co-business owner to kind of watch you guys grow, and it's staggering and impressive. When you started, so you guys listening, check out the Century City. It's in the Century City Mall, which is a beautiful mall, the Westfield Mall. It's a very cool spot if you're traveling. Right. And it's going to be part of my, I'm about to drop, I was going to make it an online class, and I just figured out, like, I'm just not that guy right now. I've been sitting on this footage for almost a year. Actually, no, for a year. It'll be a year at the end of the month where I did all this stuff about how to hack your travel. Right. I think I told you about it, and it's just like, dude, I can't sit there and map it all out. I don't have a brain like that. I'm just move on to the next one. So I'm going to release it all for free. Great. And that's awesome. Yeah, and a lot of the things that I cover in there are things like IV therapy and cryotherapy and all this kind of stuff that you guys offer. So it's like, I always recommend when people travel, even if you're not a biohacker in your day-to-day life, when you travel, man, you have no idea how smoked you're getting. Especially as you get older, it starts to really affect you. So it's a good pit stop. Right. But anyway, back to your story. So when you you're kind of this, star child of how, getting out of school early and starting to, practice medicine and hack people open at a young age and all this. When you started moving more into the functional medicine space and the anti-aging and all this stuff, did you get pushback from your friends and colleagues in the medical industry?
I don't know if it was more pushback as just confusion, like, what's that and what are you doing? And I mean, when I started getting into this world, it still is a really small group, but it was like microscopic group of physicians,
Right.
And of course, there's a lot of like, I'm a doctor. I'm here to prescribe a pill. That's my job, in our medical profession, unfortunately, and talk about nutrition and talk about detox. All that's like, see the nutritionist, go to the alternative healthcare practitioner, and so it's kind of just like confusion about why are you doing this, and I find myself like you. Life is so much better when you have a mission in life, right? And I'm lucky enough that in my previous career, which is, I still do surgery. I did well enough that I had some bandwidth, both in time and also financially, to be able to do something different, right? And so this is something I've always wanted to do, and I feel like it's my mission, and it's something that allows me to contribute back to society and allows me to hopefully make a difference in some people's lives. And if we keep growing and going all over the world, like we hopefully will one day, we'll be able to make a difference in a lot of people's lives. So I find that very motivating to me to be able to do that. So that's kind of why I'm on this mission, and that's why we're doing all the things we do. And I love being on the forefront of what's out there. There's so much coming out. We're making more discoveries every year now than we did in a decade 20, 30 years ago.
Really?
The rate of growth of medical knowledge is going exponentially higher. And now that we're finally able to apply data and artificial intelligence to the entire discovery process in health and put those things together, I mean, we're going to see an explosion in the next 5 to 10 years of scientific discovery. The old way of learning anything in medicine was to do a study, right? And we all know that studies are pretty much only considered useful if they're double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled studies. That's when people really look at a study. And then you have to take many studies, put them together, and see if all those studies correlate. This is an extremely time-intensive process, and a lot of times it never gets done. So you never really learn what's important unless you create one of these studies, which are extremely expensive. They take a long time. And I think what we're going to see now is that type of medical discovery is going to become a lot less valid or a lot less used, and utilizing like artificial intelligence and quantum computing and data collection and actual entire population data and putting that together is going to give us much more useful information much quicker. And it's really exciting to be in the forefront of all of that and be able to see that happen. And then our goal with Next Health is to be the platform where people can go and say, okay, I heard about this new anti-aging therapy. Do you offer it? And us being one of the first ones to be out there to be able to offer these things after it's been scientifically validated.
Yeah, it is exciting in that way because it's so time consuming and so expensive to run these studies that the issue there too is that a lot of the modalities and supplements and things like that that come out don't have the funding to do the test.
No, exactly.
It's like somebody just has some discovery, some scientist or molecular biologist or whatever comes up with, oh my God, I discovered this compound or this molecule that does this or that. And they're just someone, in a lab coming up with formulae. Like they don't have the ability to go through that whole process,
Yeah.
What I think is interesting about testing, there's a company that I found recently that makes EMF mitigation tools. They're called Blue Shield. Sure. They're from New Zealand, so they don't understand that Blue Shield is a huge insurance company here. It's very confusing to people. It's blue without the E, BLU, and we'll put it in the show notes. But they make these really interesting devices that use scalar technology. So essentially, they create a resonant field in your living environment or on your person or in your car, depending on which device you have. And what happens is your body attenuates to that field, sort of rendering it invisible to these harmful EMF fields. It's really, really trippy stuff. So it's more on a a quantum level than it is a physical level. So you could put this device next to your Wi-Fi router with an EMF meter, and you're still going to see all those fields, but it won't make you as sick as it would if you didn't have this other resonant field. It's cool stuff.
Does the Wi-Fi router still work, or does your cell phone still work?
It doesn't affect the technology at all.
That's interesting.
But what's interesting is when you tell that to a science-minded person, they're like, bullshit, you know? Because I've told a couple of people that are very left brain, and they're like, I don't know, I'd have to see the studies, da-da-da. I said, oh, really? Well, what's interesting about these guys in New Zealand is that they know how powerful placebo is, A. B, they don't have the money to fund $1 million plus study, quote unquote study with double blind, blah, blah, blah. So what they've done is they go to animal farms, chicken farms, and cow farms out in New Zealand, and they find farms that are next to cell towers. You know, where the animals have a really high degree of radiation. They test the radiation in the atmosphere, and they're like, perfect. And then they'll put these devices in the barn, in the chicken coop, and they'll do blood testing. They'll look at the nutrient profile of the milk of the cows, of the eggs of the chicken, before and after the use of these devices. And so then you have no placebo. And you can do live blood cell analysis on a cow, you know, an hour with this thing on, an hour with it off. The cell tower is right outside. And you can see empirical evidence as to the positive effects on biology.
Interesting.
Yeah. For relatively free.
Exactly.
I mean, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So I think there's going to be more studies like that are anecdotal but find ways around placebo. Because I know sometimes for me it's like, I'll take a supplement in the morning, and later on that day I'll be like, God, that supplement's great. I feel amazing. Wow, that really works. And then I come home and I see it on my counter. I'm like, oh shit, I actually forgot to take it. You know? But awesome. My mind told me that I took the thing, and so I feel better. I mean, placebo is powerful.
It really is.
The power of your mind to manifest different states and things like that. So I think that that's valid. But I'm hopeful, as you said, about the future where the types of testing that we use to validate things can change and evolve just like technology evolves.
Exactly.
And there's so much repression of great ideas just because, it's not, I can't afford the study or it's not proven.
Right. And, we already have a ton of data. People get testing done all the time, right? And so all that testing data is there in some disparate like EMR system somewhere. It's a medical record system somewhere. Imagine if we were able to like harvest that data with people's permission, of course, moving forward, and just letting the computer look at it and see what patterns they find and you can do automatic discovery of different, like say you have addresses of people that live near cell towers, right? And you get the medical records of all these people living near a cell tower, and you correlate the two, and you actually find data that shows you that these are the effects, right? And all that data is out there and the technology is out there. We just have to get to a point where, there's certain countries where all medical data is automatically shared, and they discover so many things about their population. We have to get to a point in our country where, that sharing is done, but of course protecting your privacy and also being able to participate willingly in that data sharing, right? And so I think as the technology keeps advancing, we as a society need to come together and agree amongst each other that we're going to help participate with our own data, because our data is so valuable.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's cool. It's an exciting time. So
right.
I want to, I love doing the show because I'm always on the cutting edge. The minute I find out about something, I find an expert like you and we get to dive into it. So for the people listening, I'd like to get into some of the things that I've tried that I find to be beneficial, that you practice and offer, and just go into some of the basic benefits of the different modalities. So the first one that comes to mind is the red light therapy. And so I'm not sure I think my Juve episode will have already come out. So those of you listening, it will have. So those of you listening that want to know more about photobiomodulation and red light therapy, there's an episode I did about that recently. But I have this Juve red light machine, right, in my office. I just stood in front of it this morning, buck naked, and drank my morning elixir. I love that freaking thing. But you guys at Next Health, you have this giant bed. It's like a tanning bed where you're completely surrounded by this really intense red light. So what are some of the basics of why someone might integrate red light therapy? Right.
So I think the two main ways it's thought to work is, number one, by nitric oxide release. And nitric oxide is a compound that's found around our blood vessels that increases the diameter of those blood vessels to cause more blood flow to your tissues. And the more you oxygenate the tissues, the more blood flow you have, the more toxins are removed, and the better your cells do. So that's one way. The second way is thought to work is by mitochondrial activation. So, our mitochondria, as we age, they become less and less able to produce energy efficiently, and so the red light stimulates them to make energy more efficiently as well. So between those two modalities, and people theorize about other modalities as well, I think it's extremely beneficial. There's some anti-aging effects that they're thinking about with the mTOR pathway and other pathways that are involved in aging that might be related. We use it as part of what we call our longevity circuit, which is the near infrared light. Then we do the heat with the far infrared, and then we do the cryotherapy. And those three technologies together, we feel, and we're looking at this helping people really turn back the clock on their aging and help with their mitochondrial activation.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love that that circuit.
Yeah, it's a great circuit, right?
Yeah, I mean, since I was a little kid, I've been going to hot springs and then getting out in the cold or jumping in the snow or jumping in a river or something, and I just always made me feel invigorated and alive. And then, now later in life, I'm like, oh, and there's devices that do that now. So you don't have to live in the middle of the mountains to experience some of that contrast and those, the benefits of just exposing yourself to what's in our natural environment.
Right.
So,
and for us, we live in the city, right? So it's hard to find that in your natural environment. It's just not out there. And then, life being what it is you're busy. And so, to be able to cut it half an hour off of that entire circuit and just be able to do it more efficiently with these technologies. So for example, the cryo machine, you get the same benefit as a cold plunge for 20 or 30 minutes in 3 minutes of being in the cryo chamber. And it's a dry cold versus a really wet cold, and so you could save a lot of time by utilizing some of this more high-tech devices. But like you said, we've known about this stuff for years. People have been going into heat saunas and doing a cold plunge immediately afterward for probably a century or so, right? I mean, it's been around for a long time. We know that almost every country has been using these types of things, cold plunges, heat, for a long time. And now, finally, there's a lot of research coming out showing how heat followed by cold can actually help in anti-aging. And so it's really interesting to see the science finally catching up with what has been going on anyway in cultures for a long time that people just anecdotally just did.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's funny. That I talk about spring water a lot, which is drinking good, high-quality spring water, and also soaking in healing waters. And people hear healing waters, it sounds kind of woo-woo. Oh, so what's the magic water? But you have to understand, throughout all recorded history, human beings have settled in areas where there are hot springs and where there are cold springs.
Right.
That's why the most common name for a town in the United States of America is what? Springfield.
Yeah.
A field full of springs. And if you start researching the number of cities and towns and streets that are something springs, this could be said for the world, but let's just say in the U.S., the whole country's basically settled around springs.
Sure.
Because nature provides this amazing nectar that we just think of, oh, yeah, it's just some water.
No.
Not all water is created equal. So, yeah,
right.
I love going to some of the hot springs resorts and reading the history of them. And in many cases in this country, the native peoples here that were here before us Europeans came over would settle around these healing hot springs areas, and that's where many tribes would settle, and there would be conflicts over those prized pieces of land where the earth spewed forth this hot healing water. So it's really interesting stuff. I want to talk about cryotherapy because I find a lot of people strangely still don't really understand what it is, the different types. To me, when I first found out about it, day one, I was doing it on a regular basis. So I'm like, oh, cryo, of course. Doesn't everyone do that? But for the people that might not be familiar, what are the different types? And what are the benefits? Because I think the first times I did it, the first time I did it was in a little enclosed room. But then there's other places that I've been in where I travel, and it's in a little chamber and your head sticks out, which I don't like as much as what you guys have the coldest one. It's you feel like you're in Antarctica. I always say, because I always request maximum cold and I want to find out what that is, constant fan, and it's like you're in a snowstorm 'cause it's just blowing on you and it's super hardcore.
Yeah.
So what are the different types of cryo machines and what does it do?
So cryotherapy, the first types of cryotherapy machines that came out, they use gas, right? And so they used the nitrogen gas, and that made the tube cold, and they would pump the gas kind of on the bottom of the machine, and that would kind of freeze the entire chamber, and your head would have to be out of it because the gas can cause you to suffocate. And so you have to keep your head out of it so you don't breathe that gas in. The problem with that is that a lot of your temperature receptors are located in your head, and so you're really not getting the real benefit of lowering your body temperature. So what people then started to do was to make full body chambers where you actually go inside the chamber, but it's the same kind of thing. The coldness is kind of pumped in through the bottom, so your feet get really cold, your upper body gets kind of cold, and then your head gets not as cold, and so there's not like an even cooling of your entire body. And then what we have, which is a non-gas electrical chamber, and so this chamber, it cools the entire chamber evenly, so you get even cooling and you don't have the risks of gas involved, which is a little bit safer, I think. The other thing about the cryotherapy chamber is that it provides a dry heat, a dry cooling, which is a lot more effective than like a wet cooling and like a cold plunge. So the drier the cooling, the more comfortable it is, and we think it's more effective as well. So those are three different types, and so we have the of course the newest and the most technologically advanced type that goes to negative 140 to 160 degrees in temperature, and that's what we found to be the most comfortable temperature to drop you to, as cold as we can get you. And then if you want and if you tolerate more time in the cold, that's even better than dropping the temperature further. So,
interesting.
Yeah. So most people go to 2.5 to 3.5 minutes, somewhere in there. Yeah. After 3.5, we want to get you out of the chamber, just because we want to, of course, prevent frostbite and those kind of issues. So, but you get really good benefits after 2 to 3 minutes in the chamber at negative 140 to 160.
Yeah, I think it's definitely easier than doing ice bath. Now, I like doing ice baths myself personally. I like the water. Like if I had a choice between jumping in an ice bath and doing cryo, if I have the time,
sure,
because you get all wet, like you have to take a shower. It's like a whole thing. Cryo, you jump in there, jump out.
Right.
It's like super fast. But I like the hardcore feeling of the ice bath.
It's hardcore.
Because it goes to your bones, it's so cold. Whereas, the cryo is more a surface cold. But one thing that's true of both methods of freezing your ass off, for me at least, is it puts me in the happiest damn mood that day.
Yeah.
I know if I go do my Kundalini yoga, then I go across the street to Next Health and I do my cryo, I'm automatically just in the best mood all day long. The combination of those two things is a total win. So why does freezing yourself make you happy?
One neurotransmitter, norepinephrine. So you have this huge surge of norepinephrine, which is a great mood elevator. You also have an endorphin rush as well. So between those two, it creates this kind of happy, great sensation in your mind that lasts probably about 24 hours or so, I think.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then what about other benefits of cryo, aside from just putting you in a really ecstatic mood? Weight loss, like inflammation. What can one expect from why would I want to motivate people to give this a shot, especially if you're one of those people that's like, I hate cold.
Absolutely.
Why is it worth doing?
So one of the biggest things it helps you with is inflammation. So inflammation, as we all know, like when you hit yourself or say you sprain your knee, right? Putting some cold on it makes it feel better. So it's the same kind of process. Your body has inflammation going on throughout it all the time. And inflammation is one of the main reasons you experience pain in your body throughout the day. The more you use your joints, the more inflamed they get over the course of the day. And the cryotherapy, or just any kind of cold therapy, but especially cryo, is a great way to reduce inflammation instantly. So we have people with like rheumatoid arthritis coming in sometimes twice a day to do cryotherapy because it just makes them pain-free, and they just love it that they're finally found something that's pain-free, that gets them pain-free without having to take crazy immune suppressive drugs or tons of pain medication, narcotic pain medication. They can finally do something that reduces their pain and their inflammation without any side effects. So inflammation is another key reason that cryo can help you. Also, there's a lot of research going on as far as different proteins that your body creates when you're in that cold state. And so they're finding that when you're exposed to these extremes of temperatures, heat and cold, your body goes into a kind of a shock state, and that shock state is actually very beneficial for clearing out a lot of toxins and a lot of senescent cells and those types of things that your body accumulates over time, and that could have some anti-aging effects. So lots of research still needs to be done, but my kind of thought process is, it feels great. I love doing it. Like, it doesn't hurt me, I'm going to keep doing it. And if there is there is a anti-aging effect that occurs on the side, that's even better. But it definitely makes you sleep better, I think. I sleep amazingly well.
True.
Right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, after cryo, like, I get a good night's sleep, like, every time. It's great.
Yeah. I think of it, with hot and cold therapies and even the red light therapy and some of these things that are harnessing and amplifying elements that are present in nature.
Yeah.
Like we said, unless you are of a peoples that has lived around the equator and evolved just around the equator, where you have a relatively steady temperature. If you're a migratory hunter-gatherer ancestral human, you were exposed to extreme heat and cold throughout your life based on the seasons and based on where you traveled to. So to me, it's like, if you can't handle extreme cold for a short period of time, you're degenerating. And you're becoming domesticated. Like,
right.
Somebody sent me, people know I'm such a huge, ice bath and cryo proponent. Someone sent me a video of Instagram yesterday, and it's this super ripped, just cut, swole dude, just, a guy you'd be afraid to walk by on the street, just a beast of a guy. And they show him come up to an ice bath, and he puts his toe in. It's just his toe, and he's like, he's like screaming like a 5-year-old girl. And then they try and push him in. They finally shove him in. He gets in for a second. And he's just having a panic attack. He jumps out and runs across the yard, and I'm going, that's the case of someone who has a really, and I'm not judging him, it's just an observation, but someone has a really weak nervous system, nervous system that can't handle anything but 68 degrees. It's not natural. We're not meant to live like that.
Yeah,
so.
we say that in the cryo chamber all the time. Like, you have this big burly guys that play football or something, that go in there. They're out of there in like a minute. They're like, I can't do it. I can't.
Right. Yeah, and then,
right.
what's cool about it too on the cold piece is that, for people that are sensitive to cold and acknowledge that their nervous system is weak sauce, it's something you can work up to. I mean, that's what I always recommend with ice baths is, like, just get in for a second like that guy did, and then hop out. And then next time you'll stay in for a little longer. And what's cool about doing a more controlled environment like a cryotherapy chamber is you could go in your first time for 30 seconds.
Yeah, totally.
And work your way up until you're constant fan, 3.5 minutes, 160 below.
Right, right, exactly. Yeah.
And then next thing you know, that becomes easy.
Yeah. I think it's important for people to know that they can open the door and get out anytime they want.
Right.
Because otherwise they get freaked out, But it's you're right. You can work your way up. And it's always great to try these things, especially if you go to a place that's doing it safely. You're being supervised the entire time. Because, the last thing you want to do is pass out in there, which we've never seen happen ourselves, but it happened in Vegas to somebody, and she was not supervised, and, that was a disaster. And so you want to go to a place that's safe, that really knows what they're doing, that has the latest technology. It's important for people to do their research and make sure that they're going to a reputable place. And we do everything under, medically licensed, right? Because I'm a doctor, it's under my license. So we have to hold ourselves up to like the highest level of safety.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, you could potentially lose your license to practice medicine, could you not, if things went haywire at Health or something?
Potentially, yes. And so we have to.
I mean, you're kind of the guy that's
careful.
on the line as like medical director or whatever.
Right, exactly. We have very well written out protocols. We make sure that for every situation we have a protocol about what to do. And we always have medical staff on site too. So there's always someone there that that can help you should the need arise.
Yeah. When I first came in to do cryo, you guys check your blood pressure. When someone comes in. make sure they're not going to croak in the cryo chamber. But my blood pressure was too low, and your staff wouldn't let me in. And I was like, God, let me stress out. Let me get my blood pressure up. Like, what's pissing me off right now? And I don't know. I did something, and a few minutes later, I was like, do it again. And then I barely made it in. You know. And
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know why I would have low blood pressure.
That's
Too much
so funny.
meditation, maybe. All right. Recently, I came in and did something that I've been hearing about in the periphery of biohacking called NAD therapy. And I was a little nervous because the couple people I know that have done it say, "Oh man, you get these horrible cramps in your stomach and you're hunched over and it's torture for 3 hours while you're getting this IV." So I kind of put it off for a minute because I don't like feeling nauseous or uncomfortable. And then finally, I was taking a road trip, and I was like, yeah, right now I need that travel boost. And so I came in and did this IV. And dude, I don't think I've reported to you since I did, but I got to say, I've had, again, you don't know what's placebo and you don't know what's not. You guys could have put sugar water in there. And I'm like, I feel so much energy. I don't know. But I got to say, dude, I've had so much freaking energy since I did this NAD IV. Now, unfortunately, I got a cold a couple days later on that trip. So it was really tough for me to tell, how much I would be fatigued from a drive to Lake Tahoe, which is where I went, under normal circumstances versus the day after I got this IV. 2 days into the trip, I got a really bad cold, but the cold only lasted for like 3 days, and I snapped out of it. So I know it's not something that's directly related to the immune system, but it wasn't a true trial.
Yeah,
is what I'm saying.
You gotta come do it again.
Yeah, but I got to say, like, since then, and I do a number of things again, so it's hard to isolate. But I feel freaking amazing. So what's up with what is this NAD? What does it do? How might people integrate that into their practice?
Right. So NAD is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, and basically it's a precursor that your mitochondria use to make ATP, which is energy. And what happens, like we talked about a few minutes ago, is as we age, our mitochondria get less efficient at turning NAD into ATP and making energy. And so when you bathe it with this NAD by getting it IV, your mitochondria get revved up and they just make a lot of energy. And that's all over your body, in your brain, in your muscles, in your heart, everywhere. Everywhere you have, every cell you has mitochondria, and they need that precursor. So, excuse me. Basically, getting NAD IV gives the mitochondria that precursor that they need, and the mitochondria just get totally revved up, and they stay revved up for a while. Now, NAD was first discovered when they were using it for people with addiction, and so people with addiction actually get it twice a week, and they find. And there's a lot of research being done, but anecdotally and also in the research, that it really helps people get away from their drug addictions as well. And then people started using it after their addiction just because they loved the feeling, and they kept on it, and they kept that energy and all the mental clarity and the things that you experienced. And then people without addiction started trying it, and that's how it became so popular. Now there's a lot of clinics doing NAD. We like it a lot. We're really studying it to see the effects on people. But I would say 90% of the people that we've done it on felt great afterwards: energy, mental clarity, focus. There's some people that don't have any effects from it, and we don't know which people will and which people won't have effects from it, but I think it's worth a try.
Well, one thing that I definitely noticed was on my road trip I think it was the very next day, or if not 2 days later, I was driving up that 395 to Lake Tahoe like freaking Jason Bourne, dude. I mean, I had so much energy and I was so laser focused.
That's awesome.
It was insane. Yeah, I stopped and jumped in some hot springs in Mammoth. Another road stop. I went and jumped in this freezing creek. I'm playing with Cookie, running around. I mean, I just had a party. Showed up there, plenty of energy. So there's that. Awesome. The interesting thing about, God, I wish they had this stuff around when I went to rehab. When I went to rehab, they were like, yeah, go over in the corner and pray that you feel better. I was like, really, guys? I know a lot of rehabs now are integrating NAD therapy, and my theory is that people just want to shoot up something. No.
Yeah, maybe there's a placebo effect.
Because someone brought to my attention, not like they were the first person, but they said, yeah, so you're this former drug addict, Luke, and now you're sober. Have you ever considered the idea that you might be addicted to supplements and stuff? I'm like, duh. like, okay, Einstein, obviously, some people, they say a lot of people gain weight when they get sober, and we have a saying in recovery, oh yeah, they put down the needle and picked up the fork, So oftentimes these behaviors do shift, you get into other habitual things that basically give you dopamine. But I wonder what's the relation to the addiction or alcoholism pathway and how that's related to mitochondrial and ATP energy. Do you know why it's helpful to addicts or alcoholics?
I've talked to a lot of the addiction doctors about this, and no one can say for sure what it is, but the thought is that the mitochondria in your brain have just been so wiped out for so long that this is supplying them with the precursor that they need. So that's kind of like one of the thought processes around for the addiction doctors that I've talked to. But unfortunately, it's one of those things that, like a lot of the things that are in our body, that there's not a lot of science around it. We just don't know exactly what it is. But the good thing is that now that we have more people doing it, there's opportunity to do more research around it and really try to nail down the pathway. Because once we figure out that pathway and we find out how this pathway is related to addictive behaviors, I mean, there's an opportunity really to make other treatments for addiction, not just NAD, right? Because you can attack other parts of that same pathway.
Yeah, it's interesting. What's trippy about it is, well, there's two things. One is I felt a little bit uncomfortable. I wouldn't say nauseous, but a little crampy in my stomach, but totally tolerable. I mean, I just sat there and watched TV while IV was going. You guys have a great, I don't get to watch TV I only watch like Netflix on my little 13-inch laptop. No, I don't have a TV.
That's great.
I'm not trying to be intellectual or something. It's just, I just really don't watch it enough. But you guys had this huge plasma or whatever they're called. I watched, what was I? Oh yeah, I was finishing up Ozark.
Yeah,
and I was like jonesing to binge, and I was like, this is perfect. I got to watch the last 3 episodes of season 2 of Ozark.
That's awesome. So some people do have that discomfort.
But I didn't get it though.
I know.
And then
I don't get it either.
I think we talked, and I've been taking True Niagen.
Right.
Well, did we talk about that?
We did.
That you?
We did.
Yeah, and then you said, that seems like the people that take the True Niagen, which interestingly enough is a precursor to your body's production of NAD. And then the NAD, which I didn't know until right now, I'm piecing together, is the precursor to ATP, which your body produces. So I guess the theory there might be if we're supplementing with something like True Niagen, the precursor to NAD, then our body's kind of already acclimated to a rapid influx of those molecules, essentially.
Right. Exactly.
Would that be?
That's what I think. I mean, I take True Niagen as well, and I did not have any discomfort with my NAD treatment. And I've kind of noticed that people that take it don't have a lot of discomfort.
Yeah.
But we're actually testing that right now. Where
cool.
A lot of our staff are guinea pigs for stuff that we do. Yeah. So we're like, here, take this bottle of True Niagen and let's do an NAD treatment on you in a month, and let's see if you have discomfort. So
that's cool. Yeah, because a couple of friends, like I hit up Ben Greenfield, who's a biohacker extraordinaire.
Oh, yeah.
He's done a lot of NAD IVs.
He did it with us. Yeah,
oh, he did?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
And so I said, dude, it didn't really bother me at all, and maybe it's because I'm taking this True Niagen. He said, well, what he had noticed is that after he travels or he experiences a lot of mitochondrial fatigue, then it's much more uncomfortable. So if he's, pretty smoked when he walks in, it's going to hurt a lot more essentially than if he's, in top shape and, has been getting plenty of rest and stuff. And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
So it's almost like if you have the interior,
the need.
It's interesting with the way that correlates. My question is with things like this, I don't know that there's an answer, but if I'm putting exogenous NAD into my system from the outside, is there any known risk to my body then down regulating its own production, where it's going like, oh, we don't need to make NAD anymore because we just got it in our arm?
I think hormones really function that way more than anything, because you have negative feedback mechanisms with hormones. So like, for example, if you take testosterone, your testicles will stop making as much testosterone as it used to. And I don't think that's necessarily the case with NAD and other vitamins, minerals. Those are all things that, your body has to get from exogenous sources. And, I think Out of all the vitamins, the only thing you can really make is like vitamin D because sunlight makes vitamin D, and you can make some vitamin K. But otherwise, every other vitamin we need to take from an exogenous source, and mineral. We have to put that into our bodies. So I can surmise it's probably the same uh, uh, relationship with NAD.
Interesting. So you're going to be eating foods and taking in nutrients that provide the raw materials or the precursors for your body's NAD anyway. So in a sense, you're just skipping that process and you're just going, here, we made some in a lab, let's just plug that in. So it's not going to inhibit your body from then producing it from the raw materials you give it next week or whatever.
Yes, exactly.
Have you heard anything about, I've been doing, what have I been doing? Oh, Pau-de-arco and caffeine.
No.
Yeah, Pau-de-arco and caffeine, from what I understand based on my research, have this synergistic relationship where they help your body to create a lot of NAD.
Really?
Yeah. So
what is Pau-de-arco?
Pau-de-arco is an herb from South America that I believe it's a bark, if I'm not mistaken, on trees, and you can get it in raw form and make tea out of it. It's very potent antiviral, antifungal, antibacterial as well because it comes from the jungle, the very humid jungle, and so it's a way that trees protect themselves from those things. Interestingly enough, one of those miracles of nature. But yeah, I've done some research on it. So I've got a bunch of Pau-de-arco extract and I put it in my coffee, my morning elixir now. So I don't know, but there seems to be some evidence toward that, which is cool. But
you should post on the show notes what your morning elixir is. It gets more interesting every time I talk to you.
It shifts. Right now, I'm doing shilajit tar, which is a resin from the high altitude mountains of the Himalayas, and it's ancient plant matter that's been decomposed and compressed into this tar. It's full of fulvic acid and humic acid, and very rich in minerals. So I put like about a pea-sized, clump of this tar in there, and then bulletproof beans, grass-fed butter, brain octane, C8 MCT oil, and then I'm doing very minute, alternating different days, but very minute dose, like 1/10 of a gram of psilocybin, and about a gram of cordyceps. And about a gram of lion's mane extract from real mushrooms. Yeah. And so it's a really potent brain elixir.
Nice. I love it.
And then I'll also do some gelatin.
Yeah.
Yeah, some gelatin powder. So yeah, it's pretty amazing.
What's the gelatin powder for?
It's like what's in bone broth.
Oh, okay.
So it's gelatinized protein, essentially, right?
Got it.
So it's sort of like the collagen peptides, but it's specifically gelatin. And it only really works in a hot drink. Because if you like make my elixir and leave it on the counter, it becomes jello. It becomes like a really gross jello, like a coffee mushroom jello. It's disgusting. I've actually eaten it with a spoon because I'm like, I don't want to waste my herbs. They're expensive.
Exactly.
But yeah, and then there's tons of amino acids. The amino acids are concentrated in that gelatin. So and then you have, really good, highly digestible protein in the drink too. So it's good to do some protein.
Nice.
So that's what
I love it.
That's what I'm doing currently. Yeah. And then the Pau-de-arco extract, and I think that's it. And you know what? It's funny. It tastes actually really good.
I love it.
Yeah, it tastes really good. And it's, just.
Yeah, I do something similar with coffee, mushrooms, and also MCT oil. I don't have the Pau-de-arco though. I want to get some of that.
Yeah, it's cool.
Great,
it's cool. I found a company that makes it in Hawaii. And they have one extract that has glycerin, and then they have one that has alcohol. And I don't want to do too much of either. But the glycerin one's cool, a couple droppers of that, because it sweetens it up a bit.
Right.
Oh, I also put reishi mushroom in there, too. I just got some more of that. So I alternate between 4-sigmatic, which make the really tasty mushroom extracts. But then I also get more hardcore bulk extracts from Longevity Power. Makes this really potent reishi extract.
Nice.
It looks like powdered coffee. I mean, it's dark brown, super concentrated, and then real mushrooms for the lion's mane and cordyceps. Yeah. But those don't, they're not user friendly. They don't taste good. So if you're an average person, just stick with 4-sigmatic because they're high quality extracts, but they're made to actually taste good.
Yeah, that's what I use. I use the 4-sigmatic.
And they're not like a medicinal dose that's going to taste really nasty.
Right.
All right. Anyway, then. One of the things I started doing years ago used to be called a Myers cocktail.
Sure.
And then it sort of evolved, and basically they're vitamin and mineral IVs. What's the history of, injecting nutrients, and what's up with that?
So, I've been writing for IV therapy in the hospital since I was like 21 when I got to the hospital. I mean, we've been giving it in what's called TPN, total peripheral nutrition, to hospital patients for forever when their gut wasn't working, right? And so they weren't able to take in their own nutrition. Either they're in the ICU and they're on a respirator or something, and so we give people the nutrition IV because basically you need it. And the Myers cocktail is given in the emergency room all the time for example, alcoholics that come in that are in withdrawal, and those types of situations, people that have not had nutrition for a very long time. And the reason we give IV nutrients in the hospital is because the person has not gotten enough, or they're unable to take in nutrients themselves, right? And so your body, of course, like we talked about earlier, can't make these nutrients. You have to take them in from exogenous sources. The reason IV therapy now is become very popular in the mainstream is, I think, for a couple of reasons. One is that our food supply now is so devoid of nutrients that you literally, like a head of lettuce now has the same amount of nutrients as like one lettuce leaf maybe 100 years ago. It's
Wow.
really, there's all sorts of studies being that you can just Google on the internet about the nutrient content now of our food versus the nutrient content 100 years of our food, and it's completely different. And the food actually tastes very different because of the lack of nutrients. And so I think that's one major reason. And the reason for this is, as you could probably surmise, is that we over farm the same land over and over and over again. We suck it dry of nutrients, and then there's not much left to put in the food. And then you have genetically modified food, which is made to grow gigantic, so you have more carbohydrate basically, but you really don't have the nutrient density in the food as well. So you might go to your favorite salad bar and eat a salad, and you're getting a lot less nutrients than you used to, but you're getting full, so you're just not taking in as much nutrients as you should be. And I think that people are experiencing chronic nutritional deficiencies because they're just not taking in enough nutrients, and people don't feel good. People feel sluggish, they feel fatigued, they have brain fog, they're tired because of this. And it's controversial, of course, because I'm sure if there's any doctors listening to this, half of them will say that that's BS, and you can take in all the nutrients you need from food. But in my experience, especially in this age where where everyone's trying to maintain their weight at a certain level, most people do have some nutritional deficiencies. And we measure micronutrient levels on people, and almost everyone has a micronutrient deficiency.
What are the most common deficiencies you guys see?
Vitamin D is huge. I mean, people just do not get
It's the
enough
goddamn
vitamin D.
sunscreen industry. Like
It
we're
is,
talking about
yeah.
the sugar industry lobbying
Right.
against fat. It's the sunscreen industry. I'm telling you, from the 1950s on, getting people afraid of the sun.
Yeah, like extremely fearful of the sun, and so we don't get enough sun. We don't take in enough vitamin D, and then LA has a lot of people that are vegetarian, vegans. So we see a lot of like anemia from iron deficiencies, a lot of B vitamin deficiencies, and the IV vitamin cocktails, like the Myers cocktails, helps to supplement that. So it's anecdotal, meaning, but there's tons of patients that get IV vitamins every single day, and they feel great immediately afterwards. And say you're getting sick, like or from returning from a flight or something, and I always get sick when I travel. I don't know about you, but it's like pretty much 100% of the time I'm going to come back sick.
If I don't get sick, I come very close to it.
Yeah.
I'm always teetering on getting sick. Yeah.
Right, it's terrible, and I think it's the EMFs. It's definitely a lot of things, the air quality, all of that. But
The germs in hotel rooms and airplanes too.
exactly, and the
You
food.
ever seen those videos where they come in with a what do they call that that black light?
Yes.
They
Oh
show
my
like
God.
your hotel comforter and stuff.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
I've seen that.
And you know what is the most because I'm not like germ phobic, but it's just interesting to me when you have like hotel rooms are very interesting to me because you have thousands of people coming through one little space. And in my bedroom here, it's been only me and a couple other people in 3 years, not hundreds, if not thousands. But that the grossest thing in hotel rooms I found are their TV remotes. And I'm like, that's perfect, because I don't remember when the last time I turned on a TV in my hotel room. But don't touch the remote, wear rubber gloves or something. Yeah, that's the most disgusting. I'm like, oh, that's so gross.
Yeah. But hotels never wash those blankets too. I mean, like people don't realize that.
It doesn't matter if it's an expensive, really nice hotel either. There's still thousands of people going through that room being gross humans.
Right. Exactly.
So I'm on board 100% before and after I take a long flight. I happen to come into Next Health. I'm not trying to be like a big commercial for Next Health. It's just the truth. And that's just part of my protocol. So I'll even time my flights so that I can come in and get an IV when I land in LAX. So I try to get back early enough, and I literally go straight to there and get my IV and then come home. Or even sometimes I get an IV in the morning and I fly out of LAX that day. If not, within 1 or 2 days, before and after. And, you're going to drop a couple $100 or something, on doing a couple of them. But to me, it's like to feel good where I'm going, and I'm going to visit family or go on vacation. I don't want to feel fatigued. I don't want to take 3 days to recover from the flight. I want to wake up the next day and be ready to crush it, whether it's business or pleasure.
Exactly. And I do the same thing. And for me, it's the same process. I try to get an IV as soon as I get back from a trip, because it makes my next week much more productive. And it's not like I'm suffering for a week. And I find that the older I get, the more I suffer if I don't do that. So it's non-negotiable for me now.
And what's the difference between doing an IV of these nutrients? So it's obvious we can't get it from food because it's not in the soil. Where's it going to come from? Thin air. So what's the difference between eating a handful of vitamins and getting an IV in terms of assimilation?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So there's absorption issues, right? And it depends on how much of a vitamin you can take and actually absorb, and what percentage of that actually makes it into your bloodstream. But more than that is that the supplement industry is just like the wild, wild west. And so you really don't know the consistency of your supplement, and if it's a good supplement that actually has what it says it has in it, unless you go to consumerlabs.com, check out all your supplements. Most people are so used to just buying their supplements off the shelf at CVS, and a lot of those supplements really don't have the recommended daily allowances in them. And did I talk to you about what happened in New York a few years ago, where the Attorney General forced Walmart to take all their supplements off the shelves because they tested 5 of them, and some of them were just dust.
That's funny you mentioned that, because I mean, a place like CVS, you can pretty much guarantee the whole vitamin section is just trash. But I was in Sprouts yesterday. There was just a kind of healthy grocery store here in LA. I just stopped there to get a freaking acai popsicle or something. I was like, oh, I want something sweet, which happens. But I went in there and I had to walk through the vitamin aisle, and they had some okay stuff, but I was like, God, these poor people, man. People don't know. They come in here, 90% of that stuff was just garbage. Because I know the brands and they're fake. When you look at even you look at the ingredient deck, there's all these excipients and additives and binders and fillers and all of this swag. They're basically, in drug terminology, we'd call that stepped on. It's when you cut something and there's very little of the actual, desired substance left in there.
Exactly. And I think, if you want something that is going to work and is very immediately bioavailable, I think IV therapy makes a lot of sense. So that's why I think IVs are probably a better option than actually taking the supplements orally. But I still take my daily supplements orally as well. I mean, I have, I verified my supplements, make sure I got some a good product, and I take them every day.
What's
as well.
that site you mentioned that you can?
Consumerlabs.com. Oh. Yeah, there's a $30 a year membership fee, but it's an awesome site. So it's kind of one of those old internet websites. It's not really fancy looking, but they put a ton of information on there about every supplement they test. They test all the major brands.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. And then they give you a rating for it. But then they also have great just informational articles about vitamin D or omegas, those kind of things. So
cool.
Yeah, check it out.
That's a good resource. Yeah, because I'm doing this stuff for a while, so I'm pretty good at vetting what companies and brands make the legit stuff. And I do really read the ingredients, and I look where it's sourced from. And sometimes I'm that a-hole that will email a company and be like, where's this from and where's that from? And is it irradiated? Do you check for metals, molds, and all that stuff?
They love your emails. I love it.
I'm that guy. I remember once I called the goat farm where I get my goat milk to make my kefir, and I was like, excuse me, I know this is a little bit intense, but what water do your goats drink? Is it from a well? If so, has that well been tested for lead? Da da da. And they're like, really, dude? Let me get back to you. And they passed snuff, but I'm that guy. But also because I feel a sense of responsibility now that I'm a voice and an advocate for different brands and, different practices and stuff. I never want to recommend anything that's subpar in any way.
Yeah, no, that's
because it's one thing to put things in my own body, but when I'm recommending things to other people, there's an integrity karma thing happening there.
You're absolutely right.
Another thing interesting about the IVs is I would think that do you lose some of the punch of supplements through your digestive system versus just putting it right in your vein? I mean, isn't like the point of swallowing something and digesting it to get it into your bloodstream anyway? So are we not bypassing that whole 35 feet of guts and just going like right in there?
Yeah, I'm sure there's some of that. One of the biggest things I'm concerned about, or not concerned about, one of the biggest things I think about is our microbiome, right? So our microbiome are the 100 trillion bacteria, viruses, fungi in our gut that probably also utilize some of these vitamins. And if you're not getting enough vitamins in your diet and minerals in your diet, then your microbiome is suffering as well. So I wonder about that. I think about that, and I wonder what the effect is of not getting enough nutrients in our diet for our microbiome. But there's still a lot of research that needs to be done as far as that's concerned. As far as your own body and the punch you get from absorbing the vitamins yourself, I don't know if that'd be that much of an issue, because when you get the IV into your system, it kind of you verify the quality of it because this stuff comes from verified pharmacies, and you're getting a really good quality high dose of vitamins directly to your cell lines. So I don't know, but I think it's a great question. I don't know if there's an answer to it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think about things like this because I'm just looking for maximum effect.
Yeah,
and then you guys do some stuff with PRP, platelet-rich plasma.
Yeah.
And are you doing anything with stem cells?
Yes.
You are? So
we are. Yeah.
Tell us a bit about those therapies and how they're used.
Sure. Okay, so platelet-rich plasma is basically what we do is we take your blood, we spin it down, and after we spin it down, the top layer of that is just the growth factors that are in your blood. So when we can separate out those growth factors, and then we can inject them into certain areas of where you need growth factors. So a lot of people inject it into joints, for example, to help regenerate cartilage. People inject it into your face to regenerate collagen tissue, into their hair follicles to help regenerate the hair follicles as well. So growth factors are very useful throughout your body, and you can put them where they're kind of needed by doing PRP. And the next kind of level above that is stem cell therapy. So there's a couple of different ways of doing stem cell therapy. One is to use what we call autologous stem cells. Those are your own stem cells from your own body. And then there's umbilical stem cells, which are stem cells from the umbilical cord blood of a baby, basically. And we're doing autologous stem cells where we liposuction the fat, basically, because the fat is billions of stem cells kind of locked away inside your fatty tissue.
I've had that done, and unfortunately, I thought it would like reduce my muffin top, and it did not. They're like, no, we don't lipo enough. I was like, ooh, double bonus! Like I can get lipo on the waistline and get stem cells out of it, but no, it doesn't unfortunately have that effect.
No, we only take about 200 cc's or so, because if you're going to keep doing stem cells, and you want to preserve some of that fatty tissue too. You don't want to liposuction all of it, and then you don't have enough left to do it in the future.
And if you guys do the fat derived cells, do you have a way to store them so someone could come back and just get another dose without having to do the extraction again? Yeah,
so no, we don't store them in the United States because it's basically not FDA approved to store them in the United States. So unfortunately, to store them, some people go to Panama or they go to see other countries that allow you to store them, and not just store them, but also expand the cell line. So they take the stem cells that you have and they grow more stem cells from it. But none of that is really allowed here in the United States.
Do you think there's validity to culturing your stem cells and making 100 million of them out of 10 million or whatever, I don't know what the numbers are, but in other words, like if you get it taken out of your bone marrow and your fat like I did, there's a finite number of them, and then you're putting them back into different parts of your body so that they then express themselves in whatever way you hope they do wherever you put them. But would it not be better to go to a place in Panama where you're getting a zillion freaking stem cells because they have the ability outside of the FDA to multiply them? Like, in other words, is more better, or do we know that?
So the reason the FDA doesn't allow it is because there's still a ton of research that needs to be done to make sure it's safe. Because just like any other cell in your body, as it duplicates and recreates itself over and over and over again, there's a chance for that duplication to go wrong at some point, right? And when that happens inside your body, it's called cancer. When it happens outside your body, we don't know the effects of it yet. Right?
X-Men. That's X-Men level.
Okay. And so I think there needs to be still some validation of that done. People are doing it. I think, there's a lot of people that are concerned that once you take a stem cell and you keep multiplying it after a certain number of multiplications, when should you kind of stop and say that's the end point of where it's safe to multiply the stem cell? So there still needs to be some work done around that.
And the umbilical cells that you guys are using, whose kids do they, whose babies do they come from? Is it from like aborted fetuses or?
No, not
Can
from
a
aborted
woman have a
fetuses.
baby and be like, yo, I'll sell you some of these cells, or like, where do they?
Right. So, when I had my son, we were offered the option of taking the umbilical cord blood and storing it in case we needed the stem cells for the future.
Ooh.
Yeah. So everyone
Did you
is.
do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's
yeah,
amazing.
Yeah.
That's such a great idea.
Yeah.
So
You
then
have to do it.
When your kid's 90 and they have a busted hip or whatever, they could put those old, really nice, strong cells. Essentially, I mean, obviously by then there'll be other interventions and things, but
well, I mean, the thought is eventually they'll be able to take those stem cells and then actually be able to induce them into a certain cell line, so you can grow like heart muscle tissue or maybe even brain tissue at some point.
Wow.
The technology is going in that direction. So that's
cool.
If your kid's born now and is going to live another 100 years or more, 100 years down the line, that technology is absolutely going to be there. So it's good to have that stuff kind of stored up.
That's cool.
Yeah. So to answer your question, the stem cells that come from umbilical cord is that donated blood specimen from the cut umbilical cord of the child after the baby's born. So there's no fetal abortions or anything like that. No fetal tissue. It's the same blood that's being stored that you store for your own kids. Some of that is donated. I think the company that we use gets it from San Diego, from a hospital in San Diego, and it's all donated blood basically.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And the nice thing about umbilical cells is that these are young cells, right? So they're not my like 40-something-year-old cells, that I've taken out of my body that are kind of older stem cells. These are brand new stem cells that were just produced by a human being. And so there's the thought around that is that these new stem cells that are produced by a new human being basically are probably more effective than older stem cells being injected.
Right. Yeah, totally makes sense. Well, I can vouch for, I had the stem cell treatment and it did help in certain areas. Like I had it done primarily for my hip and my back, but I don't really have like a true result because then I think I injured my hip after that happened. I don't know what I did, but it got worse, and I know it wasn't from getting a stem cell shot. Like there's no way that structurally that could have messed me up. So I have a true read, but it did help my shoulder, and I had it injected in various other places in my body. But the PRP I did about 10 years ago when I just heard about it, and I had kind of tennis elbow and wrist problems, probably from computer overuse and stuff, and it just wiped that out. I think I had it done twice.
Is that awesome?
Yeah, like that guided injections where they can
use an ultrasound machine. They find the joint capsule. They put it right in there, right?
Exactly.
Right.
So I was laying there and I'd look at the monitor next to me and you could see what the doctor's seeing. She's literally not even looking at my body. She's just poking the needle in me while she looks at the monitor from the ultrasound, making sure it gets where it's supposed to go. And it worked. Yeah.
I send all my friends to a good buddy of mine, Tim Davis, here in town, who does those injections. And these are people that have failed surgery many times, and then they get PRP, they get stem cell injections, and they just do so much better. And so it's just incredible to see a therapy like this come around that kind of wipes out a surgery almost completely, or at least delays it for many, many years. Surgery is very invasive. There's a lot of recovery involved, and some people need surgery. There's no amount of PRP or stem cell that's going to help them without getting a joint replacement. But I would say, at least 50%, maybe more percent of surgical interventions have been at least put off or eliminated by stem cells and by PRP.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I'm
pretty amazing. Yeah.
And then in terms of testing, something I think that's really cool, as we were talking about earlier, with people having that sense of license over their own health.
Right.
Testing is such a huge thing now, where we can kind of begin to understand how our body works and go get actual tests and see what's working and what's not working, rather than, the old school method of going to see a general practitioner because we have symptoms and then getting sent out to a bunch of specialists and playing that cat and mouse thing. So now with functional medicine and testing like you guys do, you go test all of your biomarkers and get a very realistic, a real-time a view of what's going on biologically. So what are some of the biomarker testings that you think are important? Telomeres is one I was curious about, for example.
Absolutely. So first of all, regarding testing, I think you hit the nail on the head there with what you said. I mean, it just blows my mind that people don't have access to testing. And now finally, like, you can send in like a blood spot or a saliva swab and get a few lab results back. But you really, for whatever reason, the law is that you have to go to a doctor, and the doctor has to order the test before you can get a test. And it's ridiculous. And I know there are companies that have kind of bypassed this, but it's still not ubiquitous where you can really take control of your own biology. And I feel like there's almost like this weird paternalistic kind of attitude in the medical profession that, you can't handle the information, so we're not going to give it to you.
Totally.
It's ridiculous.
Totally.
And so we have the opposite philosophy. We really want you to have control over your biology, know what your biology is showing you, and explain to you what it's showing you, and educate you so you know what you can follow along over time. Because who's going to be more vested in following your blood work than you are, right? I mean, you're going to want to know what every number means, and you're going to watch it over time. And you might even keep, like, I keep a spreadsheet of all my blood work. I don't know if you do something similar. But
I keep all of my tests in a folder in Dropbox according to year. And what I find about testing, and I want to, I want to get into some of the specific tests that are, new and cutting edge, like telomeres and whatnot. But what's been really helpful for me is to motivate me to make certain changes in my lifestyle and gamify my health. So I remember last year in 2017, I had a whole heavy metals panel, and I was like, oh, God damn it, I'm super high in lead and mercury and all these things that really are harmful. And then that made me want to aggressively detox. And so I researched all these different protocols, which were pretty intensive, and I did them. And then I recently tested. I'm like, mother effers. I got the, I was like, yes, a sense of victory that I was able to get those biomarker numbers way down through a number of different interventions.
Right.
I mean, my mercury is negligible now, and it was quite high before.
Exactly.
So I'm like, and now it's still higher. All the numbers are still higher than I want them to be. Or maybe one came up, like one weird one for me came up. Arsenic went way down, and I think it was cadmium went way up. And I'm like, what is it in my environment and my food that's high in cadmium? How am I accumulating more of that after having detoxed?
Yeah.
So it gives you clues.
It gives you clues, right.
And you can Google, like, foods highest in cadmium or cadmium exposure or whatever it is, and go, oh, God damn it, it's coming out of the filter in my air conditioner or some weird thing like that,
Exactly.
So it's fascinating to be able to do that, and I find it really helps with compliance, lifestyle compliance when I see those. Same with tracking sleep. Before I tracked sleep, I was like, sleep, schmeep, whatever. And then I started tracking it, and I could see, oh, my God, my days are so much better when I score, an 80 or 90% on my Aura ring. And then it makes me want to beat that score if it's gamified. And so I've challenged myself into making those things a priority, whereas when all of the stats are unknown, it becomes very obscured and kind of ambiguous. You don't really know. You think you feel okay and not really sure. When you see those lab results, it's amazing. So let's start with I get excited about this
Yeah.
stuff. Let's start with telomeres, because that's something I have not tested. I don't really know a lot about.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things to talk about. So telomeres are the end caps of your DNA. And so basically, you have your strand of DNA, and at each end you have what's called a telomere. And the telomere is what keeps that DNA strand basically together in the shape of a DNA strand. And what Elizabeth Blackburn won a Nobel Prize for was discovering telomerase, which is an enzyme that repairs the telomeres. Because once every cell division, your telomeres get shorter and shorter, and if you don't have good telomerase, then they get shorter and shorter and shorter, and then that cell dies. Okay, that cell can no longer replicate. And what we can do now is measure the average length of the telomeres by utilizing a blood sample in your body, and that telomere length tells you, based on population studies, kind of what your genetic age is or what your cellular age is. So you can get your telomere length measured, with a simple blood test, and you'll get a graph back that shows you're 48 years old, but your genetic age is 38. And that's because of good lifestyle habits and things that you've done, such as getting enough sleep, eating nutritious food, staying away from toxins. All of those things keep your telomeres longer. And there's a lot of different reasons that we get a huge conversation about aging, but there's a lot of reasons that we age. But one of the reasons that we age at a cellular level is shortening of our telomeres. And knowing that number is so important, because you should check it maybe once a year, and I check mine once a year, and I love kind of seeing, it's like an average of all my different lifestyle choices over the last year, how my telomere length is doing, is the way I look at it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Wow. Strangely haven't gotten that one. Now I'm like, I need to do that this week.
Yeah, you got to do it. Yeah,
That's cool.
It's a great test.
Telomere.
Yeah.
Okay. So now I know how to pronounce it too.
Yeah.
And then what about getting tested for food sensitivities, and how does a sensitivity differ from a full-scale allergy?
Right. So there's two different pathways utilizing different immune globulins in your bloodstream that give you either an allergy or a sensitivity. So an allergy is when, like, you eat a food and you get like hives. Like, I have a shellfish allergy. It's not a sensitivity. It's different. Allergy is something that you definitely want to totally avoid that food. Otherwise you can have a throat swelling and you can end up in the emergency room. Food sensitivities happen when your gut lining, for whatever reason, is leaky, and then there almost little proteins or pieces of that food going through your gut lining into your bloodstream, and then you're mounting this slower IgG immune reaction to it. Okay? And so what food sensitivities are basically telling you these certain foods, your body is having an immune reaction to it, which is causing inflammation throughout your body. And as we all know, inflammation is kind of the root cause of all disease. And if you keep your inflammation low in your body, you'll live longer, you'll have less chronic disease. If you're chronically inflamed all the time, you have a higher chance of Alzheimer's, diabetes, heart disease, pretty much every chronic disease that can kill you. All right. And so minimizing your food sensitivities, or minimizing the foods that you are sensitive to, will help you reduce that inflammation in your body and help heal your gut over time. So maybe in the future you can reintroduce those foods. Some of the most common food sensitivities that many people have are, like we talked about, grains and glutens. And gluten is one part of the grain, but there's other part of the grains you can be allergic to, like gliadin and other food sensitivities. And dairy is another big category. But there's also, like, you'd be surprised, like some people are sensitive to like cucumbers, or some people are sensitive to a raspberry. Like, these are things that people don't necessarily know they're sensitive to.
Weird.
Yeah. And so we test for 96 different food sensitivities, and
Wow.
it's incredible how much better people feel once they eliminate the foods that they're sensitive to. All of a sudden, they're less depressed, their brain fog goes away, they are able to sleep better, they're able to run faster. It really makes a huge difference in reducing inflammation throughout your body.
Another one aspect to that too is, like I was saying, is the compliance. I know for me, if you tell me as a doctor, like, oh, hey, yeah, Luke, maybe dairy's probably not so good for you, and grains, gluten, etc., I'm like, yeah, but pizza's so good.
Yeah.
You know? But if you show me a piece of paper, a medical, medically derived test results that are verifiable, and they say, wow, Luke, yeah, it's not me saying this, it's not a moral thing, it's not a lifestyle thing, you're vegan, you're paleo, whatever, it's beyond all that. It's like, no, your blood is telling us that it's reacting to these proteins, et cetera, and it would best serve you to avoid them. I find it much easier to comply with that because there's no sense of authority. It's just reality, right? It's empirical evidence.
Exactly.
And so the compliance is much easier.
Exactly. And, you know, like before those food sensitivity testing was out, people would do all these elimination diets. You know, like there was a FODMAP diet and major elimination diets where you eliminate everything. And I find that this just kind of cuts to the chase of where you're not trying to discover what foods you're sensitive to and then like reintroduce them in a week and see if you get sick. It really kind of cuts out that entire learning curve of the diets that eliminate big groups of foods. So,
yeah, and it's a lot easier. Elimination diets are hard,
They're
especially
so hard.
if you really enjoy food. You know? You got to start with nothing. You know, it's like,
Right.
cool, I'm going to have water and then build up to the next day I have a bowl of rice or whatever,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And then what about testing for genetic things, you know, genetic testing
Yeah.
to find out your kind of genetic profile?
Yeah, so there's all kinds of genetic testing out there now. You know, you have like the 23andMe that tells you like, you know, what your hair color should be and like, you know, who your ancestors are and those kind of things. Although 23andMe is adding a lot more testing to their profile. But the kind of testing that we do, we're actually testing many different SNPs. And those SNPs tell us about your health and wellness trends. So we're testing for things such as what kind of diet is the best diet for you genetically? Should it be like a Mediterranean diet? Should it be a low-fat diet? We're testing what kind of exercises your body respond more to. Is it more cardio, more muscle-building exercises? What are your reactions to things like caffeine? What are your tendencies as far as like food psychology goes and food inhibition? Are you able to? Are you going to gain weight back more rapidly? So it gives us a lot more health and wellness information in the genetic testing that we do. And we also do another genetic test for cancer risk. And so we can test for, I think it's 30 different genetic SNPs that tell us if you're high risk for cancer.
I don't think I would do that one.
It's a hard one to get mentally over. And I got myself to do it just because I was like, I gotta know.
I wouldn't, you know what? I wouldn't do that one because, well, I already know that I live a totally anti-cancer lifestyle. There's nothing more I think I could possibly do to prevent it. So if I'm going to get it, I'm going to get it. But to me, it would like set in motion some belief system that's like, oh, I'm predisposed. And I think that just for me personally, just because I'm very metaphysically oriented, that then I think I could get cancer from thinking that I'm going to get cancer.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I mean,
so I'm like, oh, God, I don't want to know. I'm just going to keep on the path and just do my thing. But that's interesting to know, though. I mean, I think for someone who is still eating McDonald's and drinking Diet Coke and, you know, living a lifestyle that's very prone to giving you cancer, that would be, again, another great compliance motivator where you're like, oh, damn, I have like a, you know, I'm at high risk of getting cancer. I really need to upgrade my lifestyle.
Right, and that, and like even like for screening, right? Like, so if you have a BRCA gene and you're a woman, for example, and you have a positive BRCA test, then you're going to get mammograms sooner in life, and you're going to be really diligent to do your breast self-exams.
Right.
You know, same thing with the prostate cancer gene in men. Like, you're going to be getting that PSA level and making sure you see your doctor to get examined or maybe get ultrasounds of your prostate, those kind of things. I think there's an element of, if you are at high risk, then you can do more aggressive screening sooner in your life too.
Got that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe I will do that. Actually, you just reminded me, years ago, my functional medicine doctor at the time, Dr. Rochelle out in Brentwood, I'm with Parsley Health now, and I really like them. But,
love Parsley.
But she was great. And she had ordered a prescription for, because I was, you know, like, I would have sudden urges to pee, you know, sorry, TMI audience, but it's like, I'm like, what the hell? I was 35, whatever I was. I'm like, when I have to pee, it's like, got to happen now, or I'm literally going to ruin your couch. And so she was like, oh, we need to get an ultrasound on your prostate. And I had that prescription on my desk for like 2 years until it expired. I never did it. So that might inspire me to get back there. God, I have so many more questions, dude, but we're running a little short on time here. Let me see where I want to go with this. Give me a quick rundown on hormone testing and some of the interventions if they're off.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, as we age, unfortunately, one of the genetic switches that kind of get turned off is our production of our sex hormones. And what happens is, you know, women go through menopause, men go through andropause as we get into our 40s. And testosterone for men and for women is one of the most important hormones in our body. If you, once your testosterone level starts going down, you start experiencing muscle loss, bone loss, you start experiencing a higher rate of cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's disease, all of that. So for whatever reason, nature kind of says that nature's done with us at the age of 40 and we can kind of, be killed off, unfortunately, and it starts reducing testosterone levels as one of those kind of aging responses. And what we test for is testosterone and estrogen and progesterone to see kind of where our sex hormones are all at. And some of the interventions that you could do, there's a lot of natural ways to increase your testosterone level, like high intensity training, helps increase your testosterone. Lifting heavy weights helps increase your testosterone. There's a lot of supplements you can take to help increase your testosterone. But if all that doesn't work and get you to a level where you're, number one, asymptomatic and also get to a number that we're more comfortable with, then we can do testosterone replacement. And testosterone replacement has been done for years and years very safely. Kind of gets a bad rap because, a lot of bodybuilders would use it and, they cause themselves a lot of problems. Yeah. And then also gets a bad rap because a lot of people talk about prostate cancer and taking testosterone. It's important to realize that testosterone is actually protective against prostate cancer. So if you're taking exogenous testosterone, you have a lower chance of getting prostate cancer. It's the people that do get it, despite that, the testosterone can kind of, there's receptors on the cancer, and the testosterone can cause it to grow a little bit faster. And we check your PSA levels, and we check to make sure your prostate is not cancerous before we give you testosterone, and keep following that as well. But anyway, so the way we can replace testosterone is either with injections, creams, or with what we call a pellet therapy. And my favorite is a pellet because it's a small pellet that's put underneath your skin of your butt. Really, we do it in a tiny procedure, like lasts 5 minutes, 10 minutes. We numb it up. We put the pellet in with a tiny incision, doesn't even be closed. And we put the pellet in, and it gives you a steady state of testosterone over the course of 3 to 4 months. You don't have to keep injecting yourself over and over again.
That's handy.
Yeah. So, we have a lot of patients doing it. They love it. For the people that are low in testosterone, it's a game changer. It's a life changer, and it's protective against Alzheimer's, heart disease, cancer. Why not? It's a way of kind of hacking nature.
Awesome. Yeah, I like the idea of the pellet. Thankfully, my testosterone is always relatively high, but
Great.
If it ever dips for any reason, I'm going to be putting one of those pellets in my butt.
Yeah, and what's so funny is that people just don't know what's causing the people get used to living a fatigued, brain fogged, painful, joint pain existence, and they don't know what's causing it, and they can't lose weight, and they're getting bigger and bigger and more lethargic, and they just don't know. And then like we do the next cell baseline, we call it, which is a total panel of many biomarkers, and we show them like, look, your testosterone's low, your inflammation levels are high, you're low in vitamin D, and you correct those 2 or 3 things, like that knowledge is so much power because you can change your life instantaneously just by knowing. And a lot of doctors don't test for this stuff. Like you'll go to your doctor, they'll do a quick exam. Maybe they'll test like 1 or 2 like tests to make sure you're not dying, but they're not testing testosterone. They're not testing inflammatory markers. And I think it's important to know not just like that you're getting tested, but what you're getting tested for, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, my friend, we're just about out of time. I have 2 super quick questions,
Sure.
And then we're going to do my final question. I activated Waze, so I'm like, I see when my appointment at Bulletproof Labs
Perfect.
is. I'm like, right now I'm going to get there at 12:58, and I'm supposed to be there at 1, so we got to make this quick.
All right.
Is there any risk, because you guys do a lot of beauty stuff, and I haven't really gotten into that because, I don't know, I feel I look okay. It's not been something urgent, but I have noticed I have a lot of tension in my forehead, and I interviewed a doctor that is what do you call it?
Aesthetic medicine doctor,
yes.
aesthetic doctor, yep.
She interviewed me, and she was like, hey, if you want to come in and do Botox. And I was like, oh, that sounds scary. Is there any, because she said, yeah, it'll relieve headaches. It's just not just for looks, but if you have tension in your forehead, which I very much do, she's like, oh, it totally makes that go away. It's amazing. You'll love it. And I was like, is it safe? She's like, yeah, of course, but that's like her business.
Yeah.
Is there any risk in Botox that you're aware of?
The only risk with Botox is if you have someone that doesn't know what they're doing, because then you can get an eye droop, and then, it can cause what does Botox do? It relaxes the muscles of you wherever you inject it. So if you over relax muscles, it can make your face look weird. It can cause your eye to droop, all of that. So you just got to go to someone that knows what they're doing.
But it's not toxic per se or something like that.
No.
Okay.
There's been hundreds of thousands of people all over the world that have gotten it.
Right.
And there's been, not that I've heard of anyone that's had any toxic Botox effect, unless people are getting their Botox from outside of the country and it's not made to the correct standards. And so you have to be really careful. Whoever's injecting you Botox is injecting the approved American Botox that they bought from inside the country.
Okay, got it. So maybe don't go to Tijuana and do it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Don't try to skimp on your Botox. Okay.
Right.
And then the last thing I wanted to ask you, is anything that you guys are doing or that you've heard of effective for hair loss? I know you guys use PRP. You mentioned for that. Are you seeing any positive results with any interventions for guys losing their hair or women for that matter?
So we do quite a few things for hair loss. First of all, we have to correct micronutrient deficiencies, right? So a lot of micronutrient deficiencies can cause you to lose hair. We also talk about stress reduction. We test your thyroid, which is another cause of hair loss. So I think testing and making sure that your biochemistry is good. Hair loss is a symptom of many different biochemical problems, right? And so first we test, make sure all that is good. PRPs works great. There's a lot of good research out there showing it works great for hair loss. But there are certain people that they don't want to go through like 6 to 8 PRP sessions. Then we also do hair transplant procedures, which have been tremendously scientifically improved over the last even 5 years, where we do what's called follicular unit extraction, where we take one hair out from the back of your head at a time and put it into the front, and it looks super natural.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, all under local anesthesia.
It doesn't look like a
hair
doll.
Plugs. Yeah, exactly. It does not look like a doll.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So we do all that stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. That's good to know.
Yeah. Part of staying young is also looking as young as you feel.
Right.
And so we do that stuff to kind of.
I do my best to not get caught up in vanity, but my hair is thinning a little bit, and God bless any of you guys that have lost your hair. Not to be disparaging against you, of course. I'm sure you're already bummed about it, or maybe you don't give a shit. But I'm like, I don't really care about wrinkles, or I got a little gut, like whatever. But I'm like, man, my hair's like it's my one little vanity thing. I'm like, I don't care if it gets thin, but I don't think I would look that awesome bald. So I'm always curious about the latest and greatest in that area. Okay, so you've taught me a lot today, Dr. Shah. Who have been 3 teachers or teachings that our audience might go check out that have influenced you or your life or your work?
Yeah, I just got back from Deepak Chopra retreat in Sedona. And man, that man is so full of incredible knowledge, and just from a more physics point of view as well. And so I'm learning a lot from him, not just about meditation and about yoga, but also about just quantum theory and how you should really think about your life and how you relate to the rest of the universe. So very interesting person, very interesting teacher, and I feel that he's one of my kind of mentors. My other mentor is Peter Diamandis. Peter, as many of you know, he's the founder of X Prize, Human Longevity Institute. He's involved with all of these things, and Peter and I do a lot of things together and on X Prize. But his abundance mentality and the way of thinking about the future and the world is so inspirational that it just keeps me extremely positive and just gives me just a gratitude for life, So I would say him. And then, I would say also, who's my third one? I gotta say my father, who's always just there to push me and to make sure that I'm always doing the best I can, not just at work but also just in life and just also with my family and all of that. So maybe those are my 3 top ones, I would say.
Great, man. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, you 2 of them. Well, I don't know. Maybe your dad's an Ayurvedic doctor.
Yeah,
I
you
could
should
get him
talk
on
to
the
my
show
dad.
too.
Yeah.
I've done 1.5 shows kind of on Ayurveda, but they were with younger generation. Your dad's an OG, but your other 2 are definitely like on my top hit list. So maybe we'll get them on someday. So in terms of social media and websites, where can people find you and what you do so we can follow you and learn more about you?
Yeah, so just go to next-health.com. That's that's where you find Next Health. We are also launching a podcast here pretty soon, so look out for the Next Health podcast in January. And then my Instagram handle is at HealthHackerMD, and Next Health is at Next Health. So that's where you can find me.
Awesome, dude. Well, thank you so much, and
thank you.
I can't wait to see you again.
I can't wait to see you too.
I'm gonna come in and do that telomere testing. That's my next goal.
Let's do
that one. Yeah. So.
Maybe you'll let me shoot some PRP into your head.
Yeah, well, dude, go for it. I've had stem cells in there.
Oh yeah, good.
They did PRP too out at Doceri clinics in Utah. Yeah, they did my face and my scalp and my nether regions. But I'm always down to do more because, like I said, I want to hang on to that head of hair as long as I can. All right, thanks so much for your time,
Thank
dude.
you.
I look forward
This
to
has been
seeing you
awesome.
again.
Yeah, let's do it again.